Okay, Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're going to get started. We've got 7 bills today. 6 of those are supplementary appropriation bills, and one of those is the other is the vacant tax. We're going to move the vacant tax piece to the end. Supplementary appropriation bills will move rather quickly. I'm Eric Costello, councilman from the 11th District, chair of the committee. To my far right, Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, and vice chair of the committee. To my left, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District. To my immediate right is Nia Garrett, staff to the committee. We're also joined by representatives of the mayor's office and the council president's office. So we do not currently have a quorum to vote, but we anticipate having a quorum in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So what we're going to do is go through each of the supplementary bills now and have those hearings. Our colleagues on the committee have been briefed on these, and they've seen agency comment reports, et cetera. So we'll get started with those. First off, 24-0602, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Transportation, the amount of $25,000. Department of Law approved for form and legal sufficiency. Law? You're not law.
Oh, that's how it's going.
We're on Law Department. We're on 24-0602, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Transportation, in the amount of $25,000. Is this approved for form and legal sufficiency?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Department of Transportation.
DOT supports this bill.
Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
We have not submitted a response on this bill.
What, do you have a position?
I've not gotten a chance to look at it, so.
Okay. Approved by the Board of Estimates. Department of Finance, favorable.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Yes, the Department of Finance stands behind our favorable response for this item.
And Ms. Larson, do you want to give us a kind of 15-second explanation as to what this one is?
Yes, this additional funding for the Department of Transportation will support additional costs for bridge assessments that will be conducted in fiscal 25.
Outstanding. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for our city agencies? Seeing that there are none, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter? Seeing that there are none, we will now go into recess on this matter. Next up, Council Bill 24-0603, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Recreation and Parks, in the amount of $905,000. Department of Law approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Mr. Chair, can we hold 603 and 604?
Why?
Because they list numerous programs or projects, and I'm not sure that fits the correct form for the bill, but I would like to consult with Hillary Ruley. She is on her way here.
Ms. Larson?
We followed the consistent format of presenting supplementary appropriations at the agency level. So the format that these items have been submitted from the Department of Legislative Reference follow the historic practice for supplementary appropriations.
Okay, we're going to go into recess on this matter. We'll come back to this one in a little bit, as well as we'll hold off on the 24-0604. Next up is 24-0605, supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Housing and Community Development in the amount of $315,000. Law Department, approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We respectfully stand behind our favorable bill report.
Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
Zachary Wellman, policy analyst for Office of Equity and Civil Rights. The OECR would have to refrain from making a recommendation until we
No
have a chance.
recommendation.
Yes.
Yep, you can just say no recommendation.
No recommendation.
Perfect, thank you. Board of Estimates approved, Department of Finance.
The Department of Finance stands behind our favorable response for this item. These funds will support additional staffing costs for housing code enforcement in fiscal '25.
Outstanding, thank you. Colleagues, any questions for our city agencies? Seeing that there are none, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter? Seeing that there are none, we'll now go into recess on this matter. Next up, 24-0606, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Public Works in the amount of $6 million. Law approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We've also been joined by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton of the 6th District, member of the committee. Department of Public Works.
Alejandra Ivanovich, representing the Department of Public Works. We stand behind our favorable report.
Excellent. Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
No recommendation again.
Thank you. Board of Estimates approved. Department of Finance.
The Department of Finance stands behind our favorable response. This supplemental appropriation will support additional staffing costs for the Bureau of Solid Waste in fiscal '25.
Outstanding. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions for our city agencies? Seeing that there are none, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter? Seeing that there are none, we'll now go into recess on this matter. Next up, 24-0607, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriations, City Council in the amount of $5,250,000. Law Department approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
No recommendation.
Thank you. Board of Estimates is approved. Department of Finance.
The Department of Finance stands behind our favorable response for this request. In fiscal '25, these funds will support additional staffing and training costs for the City Council, as well as funding for a number of external grants.
Outstanding. Long overdue for the hardworking staff that support us members of the City Council. I very much appreciate that the administration was able to work with the council president under his leadership to get this done. Critically important. So thank you. Colleagues, any questions for our city agencies? Seeing that there are none, any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter? Seeing that there are none, we're now in recess on this matter. Okay, now for the main entree. 24-0601, property taxes, special rate for vacant and abandoned property. For the purpose of requiring a special property tax rate for vacant and abandoned property, providing for the promulgation of rules and regulations, requiring a certain notice to be sent to owners of real property within the city limits, requiring a certain annual report, defining certain terms, providing for a special effective date, and generally relating to the property tax levied on vacant and abandoned property. I believe this bill had unanimous co-sponsorship from the entire city council. The lead sponsors of it, I was able to work with Councilwoman Ramos, who first brought this idea forward, and we worked very collaboratively with Council President Mosby on getting this put together very quickly. In short, I will just say that we're very grateful to Senator Hayes and Delegate Regina Boyce for providing enabling legislation at the state level in Annapolis so that we could locally authorize this to deal with a longstanding issue in the city. I'll now turn it over to Councilwoman Ramos for brief remarks, and then we will get into the hearing. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, brief. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership on helping to really get this through during this term. Again, this adds a special rate for vacant and abandoned properties. I think we've talked about this for many years, and I'm glad that we finally have permission to do so from the General Assembly. And basically what the bill does is it increases the property tax rate on just vacant and abandoned buildings that have vacant building notices. We're not including lots right now for lots of different reasons, but we will add them at some point in time. and that it won't be implemented until the 2026-2027 tax year. It'll be 3 times the current property tax rate that first year and 4 times after that. The bill also has extensive notice requirements so that DHCD and Finance will notify owners that this is happening, as well as the public. And again, the whole point here is to try, not necessarily to get revenue from this tax. We are under no illusion that we're not actually going to have that. But it will allow for more properties to be eligible for in rem, where when the liens exceed the value of the property, the city can foreclose, take possession, and work with the community on the outcome of the property. And it'll get back on the tax rolls much quicker. Right now, we only have about 1/3 of the vacant and abandoned properties that are eligible for in rem, and I'm just on my analysis of where we are, I think we can add 10% to 20% each year to be eligible for in rem once it is implemented. So again, thank you all for working on this. I know this was a priority also of the administration, obviously a priority of the council since the entire council co-sponsored, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, to our agency officials, DHCD, Mayor's Office, Finance, DHCD, Law, BDC, remind me again? You are free to leave. Have a wonderful remainder of your morning and duration of your afternoon and evening, sir.
Department of Planning.
Department of Planning?
Yes, sir.
Please skip that one. Okay, we're going to have you stick around. Office of Civil and Equity Rights, Finance, HABC. HABC, Housing Authority? Which bill are you here for today? It was? Okay. Do you have anything to share on this bill? Turn your mic on. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. The Housing Authority of Baltimore City, we stand by our bill report, and we would like an exemption because housing authorities don't pay taxes or special assessment rates.
Okay. Yeah. Colleagues, is there any concerns with excusing Housing Authority? I don't see any need for them to be here for this. You are welcome to leave.
Thank you.
I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening. Thank you. Okay. So before we get into agency comment reports, so we ran through 4 of the 6 supplementary appropriation bills. When 2 more of our colleagues get back, we're going to pause on this hearing. We're going to go into recess. We're going to do a quick voting session. I assure you, when I say the word quick, it shall be quick. And then we will come back to this. So what we're going to do for this bill is, and for kind of larger policy bills, we go through each of the agency comment reports. Then council members will ask questions of the agency officials, likely related to the content of their report. And then we will take testimony from members of the public. And then if we need to make amendments, we will consider those. And if we're going to move the bill, we will then move the bill. Does anyone who is not a regular here at City Hall have any questions about that process or what I just explained? So I will take your silence as confirmation that you understand and agree with how we're going to proceed today. Okay, excellent. All right, so let's start off with Department of Planning.
Yes, Councilman, the Brandon Canoy Department of Planning. Department of Planning stands by their recommendation for approval of this.
Excellent, thank you. Baltimore Development Corporation.
Tom Welly on behalf of BDC, we stand by our favorable report.
Excellent, thank you. City Administrator.
The administration supports the legislation, Mr. Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Office of Equity and Civil Rights.
The OECR requests a favorable report on the bill.
Favorable, thank you. All right, Housing Authority's been excused. They didn't have an opinion. Law Department, proof, reform, and legal sufficiency.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Okay, that leaves Finance and DHCD. Does the administration have any preference on who goes first?
I'll go first.
You guys want to paper, rock, scissors, or how do you want to do it?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Finance will go first. My name is Michael Moxton. I'm the director for the Baltimore City Department of Finance. Finance stands by its neutral recommendation for this bill. Vacant residential properties are a major problem for the city, and every tool to fight them is valuable to us. The particular tool we're discussing today is taxes. We know taxes drive decisions, and this bill seeks to align the incentives of the owners of vacant homes with the well-being of the city. From a fiscal perspective, we conservatively project that this bill will be revenue neutral, which is why we have a neutral report on this bill. Vacant buildings are notoriously unreliable with respect to tax generation. There is, of course, a possibility that significant numbers of vacant owners could choose to hang on to their properties without taking any action, and that would mean they begin paying the higher tax rate starting in fiscal year 27 as prescribed by this bill, which would result in more revenue for the city as outlined in our report. There's also the possibility that some of those owners walk away, resulting in a small revenue drop if those owners were paying their taxes in the first place, but then allowing for in-rem foreclosure and ultimately the rehabilitation of those buildings through the city's vacants strategy. Finally, and most hopefully, some owners will choose to rehabilitate their currently vacant home, attaining a use and occupancy permit and bringing their tax rate down to the old level. We have a number of tools as part of the Vacants Initiative to help those homeowners along their journey. Now, from an operational perspective, the delayed implementation schedule laid out by this bill will allow both the owners of vacant properties and the city time to adjust. The Department of Finance is currently implementing a new revenue system that will be online by 2026 and configured for the new rates being created by this legislation. Finance will also work with DHCD and the Law Department to formalize a lien release policy, which will allow us to protect homeowners caught up in any edge cases or misunderstandings about the property they purchased by partially abating their tax bill when appropriate. In the meantime, the city will engage in outreach to all owners of houses with vacant building notices to help them begin preparing for what's to come. And with that, I will take any questions or pass it to DHCD.
We'll go to DHCD, then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Scott Davis, Chief of Staff for Department of Housing and Community Development, representing Housing Commissioner Alice Kennedy, who is currently in India this week, representing the mayor at the U.S. South Asia Mayoral Platform on Clean Energy and Sustainable Cities. DHCD stands behind our favorable bill report. As Director Moxton mentioned, as we continue to work to address the prevalence of vacant properties in the city of Baltimore, to build on the progress that we have already made. As of today, we are at 13,108 properties with vacant building notices. We need to utilize all of the tools and available to the city to get these properties into productive use. One of those, as the councilwoman, the sponsor mentioned, it has been the in-rem tax foreclosure acquisition process, which is a faster mechanism to acquire privately owned vacant properties, of which currently the city of those 13,000 only owns 908. By increasing, in agreement with the Finance Department, we do not see this bill as a revenue generating bill, but by increasing the tax rate, it will likely move additional properties into in-rem faster and or potentially spur current property owners to making renovations themselves or obtaining permits for demolition. Like the Department of Finance, we are supportive of the tiered approach and the longer period of time for implementation. We intend to use that time to work with the Department of Finance and the administration to create rules and regulations for the implementation, and also to do outreach to property owners, particularly those who may have purchased a renovated property that was renovated without obtaining a use and occupancy permit. We are also working internally in the department to identify a program for supporting residents who may need to obtain additional contractors or work to obtain those permits necessary for use and occupancy. We feel that this is an important next step in the work of meeting the vacancy crisis head on and being able to move at the speed and scale needed to make meaningful and lasting change for all Baltimoreans. And with that, DHCD stands behind our favorable report, and I'm open to any questions from members of the committee or the council. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thank you. I think Councilwoman Ramos and I have a bunch of questions. So I'm going to start with Vice President Middleton. Do you have any questions? Excellent. Councilman Stokes? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was just reading on this report. There would be significant notices to the owners of the property. I don't know how that'll work because we've been doing that for a long time, because the same address that's vacant, that's what they use. So the same mail that you're sending to these landlords, they use the same address, let's say 1008 Caroline Street. So when you send a letter, it go to 1008 Caroline Street. How you can send all the significant letters you want. We already did that before. So what's going to be so different that you're really going to get in touch with the owners? Because it's the same process. I support it, but significant notice to the address where the vacant property is. Suppose we can't get in touch with them. Can somebody answer that?
Yeah, I'm going to, Councilman, if it's all right, I'm going to start off with some of the legislative intent of what we were hoping to have happen with the notices, and then I'll turn it over to Finance and DHCD. But our hope was that there would be a number of different outreach points, including an insert and a water bill, including a notification in the real property tax bill that's sent out, as well as notifications attached to any vacant building notice, which qualify for this, as well as multiple weeks of newspaper advertisement. And I think the director or the chief of staff can speak to a number of vacant properties. The billing address for those properties is oftentimes, in fact, a separate address where the owner or the owner representative live. But the director or chief of staff, if you want to address that piece.
Absolutely. And thank you, Chairman, for kind of leading us off, because you are absolutely right. We have a number of different ways to reach homeowners of vacant properties, and we're going to be using all of them. That includes the inserts, like you mentioned. That also includes any address that we have on file. And actually, as you said, oftentimes the address that we have on file is not just that vacant property, but some other address, sometimes out of city, sometimes out of state, and we do follow up on each of those addresses. We will also be putting notices in the newspaper, and we'll be doing a significant amount of community outreach and education to make as many people as possible aware. So it's not any one single approach, it's really all of those approaches, and we're going to be using them jointly with DHCD to reach as many people as we can.
Thank you. As the director mentioned, it's really going to be a multifaceted approach. One of the focuses on this outreach is for owners of properties that were renovated, however, without the proper permits, most significantly without the use and occupancy permit, so it is still identified as a vacant property. So that one is one where people are living in the property. We do intend to do community outreach and engage with our community leaders. In addition to, as the director mentioned, for many of the vacants registered in SDAT, the mailing address is different than the property address. In addition to that, the SDAT database, by law, all non-owner occupied properties, including vacants, are required to register with the Department of Housing and Community Development every year. So that is also another database of potential addresses, as in that yearly registry, property owners are required to provide a functional mailing address. So we recognize, Councilman, that one of the challenges is that, in many cases, the owners of the property are negligent and have not responded to notices in the past. Our focus is really, one, to support those residents who have purchased a property not knowing that it still had a VBN on it, also to connect with individuals who are currently renovating properties, and we will continue to utilize all the outreach mechanisms that the city has, and that's one of the reasons for the delayed implementation, to provide DHCD, Department of Finance, and other elements of city government the time to do that outreach and ensure that everyone should be aware, and if not, that would be in part on those owners who are negligent in response to their properties.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, 5th District member of the committee. Councilman Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, but my other question is, most of our properties are out-of-town landlords. We know that. You think they care about you putting them in a newspaper? It's in there every time it's time for tax sale. So I support this bill, but I would like to see how we're gonna address that also. I mean, there's a number of things I think Chairman Costello mentioned, but just because you're gonna put them in a paper, to me, out-of-town landlords could care less.
Councilman, it's a great point, and I think I can speak for Councilwoman Ramos and Council President Mosby on that one point, and that, we collectively view the newspaper advertisement as the lowest impact notification that we could do, but we did feel it was appropriate for a couple reasons. One, there formerly was a newspaper requirement regarding the constant yield rate of the real property tax, which we're required to put in the newspaper every year. Second, it is a low-cost notification for the city. When we talk about the total cost of doing 2 weeks, maybe we're talking $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is, but a very low impact cost. But we think the more meaningful notification will be the outreach that Mr. Davis discussed that DHCD will be doing, and the notification letters, with the expectation that those letters do make their way to the owner. How the owner responds is entirely up to them. But your point is well taken, and I think we're in agreement with it, Councilman. Thank you. Any other questions, Councilman Stokes? All right, I'm going to jump to Councilman Schleifer. Any questions? Excellent. Thank you. I have one thing that I wanted to bring up. Director Larson, I had a conversation. I know we have someone here from the Bankers Association who's going to speak when we get to the public testimony portion. And he raised a very interesting point regarding how banks that are holders of mortgages would be notified. So I did have a phone conversation with Deputy Director Mositas on Friday, just to kind of plant the seed so that finance and/or DHCD were prepared to discuss that. So is there anyone from our city agencies who can address that?
I would defer to Director Moxton. We also have Director Carla Neely with us from the Bureau of Revenue Collections.
Ms. Neely, I'm just a huge fan. Always good to see you, man. Director Neely, or Chief Neely, if you're going to be testifying, do you want to come up and grab one of these seats? just in case we jump to you. Director, I'll start with you, and you can defer to Chief Neely as you deem appropriate.
Absolutely, and on this one, I will defer to Chief Neely. We are obviously, as a department, working to make sure that we have a process in place to notify mortgage companies. But Chief Neely?
Sure. Good morning. Good morning, Carla Neely, Chief Bureau of Revenue Collections Department of Finance. We will have a full campaign to both notify our constituents, the mortgage companies. We communicate with the mortgage companies several times a year as it relates to what the outstanding taxes are for any properties in Baltimore City. We'll also have signage. We'll make sure that the signage is in different languages. And then we'll have our call center also ready for any questions or concerns that may occur.
Excellent, thank you. That covers my concern. Again, I may come back to the city agencies based on the testimony from Mr. Bob, who's here on behalf of the bankers, correct? All right, so let me go. That concludes my questions. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is my understanding that the mortgage companies also get the tax bills, so they would get the same notices that the owners would, and I'm sure we can clear that up. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we plant the seed here today about is we do have, I have gotten some questions about people who are either gathering properties to be able to do some redevelopment and how we will handle that. And I did hear in your testimony that we're going to be looking to really beef up and have a much more robust lien release program, which I think is really important, not just in this context, but the other contexts as we have, private market entities, buying properties and doing what they want to do, but needing to have that lien release. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more, or are we still needing to put some meat on the bones before we be a little bit more explicit about how that's going to work?
I could talk about it in broad strokes, and thank you for the question and for your advocacy on this, because you're absolutely right. A lien release is an important tool for us to work through those edge cases. We do need to spend some time working out a precise policy, because we want to make sure that we are applying it fairly and consistently across the board based on a set of standards, and we're going to be very transparent about it and publicize those standards. But the lien release policy is designed to do exactly what we're talking about here, to capture those situations where somebody is making a good faith effort to improve the property and make sure that they are not being penalized for it. So we will need a little more time to put some meat on those bones, but the intent is absolutely to get at what you're asking here.
And the reason we need to do that, the state law does not allow for exceptions. And we didn't really want that either. We want to make sure that we're getting to, where we need to go, but we do need to have these, we need to figure out how we're not penalizing folks that want to do the good work. So I think that the lien release program is actually one of the best options. So just to make sure that the public understands that we cannot do exceptions to this law. I mean, has there also been any thought about looking at, thinking through, I think lien release is really the best way, but thinking through whether or not, as some of these groups are going to end up with the carrying cost of this additional tax in the short term, whether or not we need to think through, how we would either compensate them for that, or are we just going to be looking at lien release as the solution to this issue?
We're going to look at every option. I do think lien release is likely the best option and the one that would be easiest to, again, administer fairly and evenly across the board. But we definitely want to look at every option, because the intent that we expect to achieve is to not penalize those homeowners who are in good faith trying to do something.
Yeah, well, there's that also, and that leads me to my question for the Chief of Staff. We do have a good amount of people that, particularly during COVID, ended up buying properties that were fully rehabbed theoretically, but did not have permits associated, or the person used permits but didn't take that last step of getting the use in occupancy. We certainly don't want folks in that situation. It was my understanding that DHCD was going to hire a navigator to be able to help those families through the process. And could you talk a little bit more about how that is working? And obviously, moving the enactment date back, I mean, not the enactment date, but the effect of the tax back is going to help us with identifying who they are and trying to move that forward before this even kicks in, correct?
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman. And one, just to follow up on the director's point, really in those rules and regulations is where we want to bring all of these pieces, because we don't want this bill to penalize either individuals in part who may have recently acquired property from the city with the intent to renovate that property, or individuals who are spurred and working on their own in the private market. And in addition to property owners who purchased homes that were renovated without ultimately obtaining the use and occupancy permit, and in some cases without obtaining any permits. We have recently hired in the permits office in DHCD the permit services liaison. Part of her role, this was also actually a promotion from within the office, so someone who is very well versed in the work. Part of her role will be working with individuals who may need to navigate and figure out how to obtain that use and occupancy. We are also working with our Division of Home Ownership and Housing Preservation to identify funds to assist residents who, especially those where the entire property may have been renovated without permits, and they will need to open up walls and do potential significant work in order to obtain the necessary permits and UNO. So this is something that does continue, that we are continuing to build out. And I know that is something that the commissioner is very dedicated to, and that we will continue through the work of the permit services liaison, of which her work is not just focused on this, but assisting across the aspect of the permits office work. And we will also, once we have more finalized assistance program, we will be providing direct outreach to those individuals that we know are currently occupying properties with VBNs that were renovated.
So we do have a hearing next week about the permit office, so I'll reserve any more of my questions relative to the permit office for that hearing. But I do appreciate that the department is moving, in that direction. I will say we did pass a law in 2021 that the previous owner has to disclose that there is a VBN on the property, and we know that that law is being broken every single day. And so working with your office and working with GBBR, we're working through the title company, trying to do that education and outreach in that regard. I also have two constituents that are suing the previous owners. So I'm hopeful that we can come to a resolution on that. Also work with the permit office on preventing that from happening. But I'm appreciative of the work on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you. And who's this new liaison? What's her name?
Yes, it is Shanika Lewis. She had been a permit tech 2 in the department and was recently promoted into this position a couple months ago.
Gotcha. Okay. How many months ago?
I would have to look. I don't remember exactly when she was promoted.
Okay. Because I would assume that a liaison in that office would be reaching out to the council like from day one. As I'm sure you're aware, at least from where I sit, the permit office right now is probably the biggest challenge and failing part of city government. Just obtaining basic permits is a challenge. Getting anybody to pick up the phone is pretty much impossible. And so, I'm quite concerned having any piece of legislation that is relying on the permit office to do what they're supposed to be doing, because they're simply not. And so, that is a concern that I just want to put on the record, and that needs to be addressed, because what I don't want to see happen is that folks are trying to get permits. They're trying to do it the right way. They can't get answers or clarity from anybody. And then, we throw another restriction and another new law on them, causing further damage to people who are trying to invest in the city. And this isn't just an issue that one-offs, like mom and pop renovation companies are having. This is an issue that even some of the largest institutions in town are experiencing, and that just shows that there's a huge failure there. And so I don't know what the answer is as far as how to protect that, but what I do think that needs to be in place is that there's some type of guarantees from the office. So if people are reaching out in writing and they're not getting these responses, that they're also not going to be penalized for not being compliant on something that they've attempted to be compliant on.
When did this person start again?
I would have to look. I don't remember offhand, and I don't want to give you the incorrect date.
She's been there for a minute, right?
Less than 2 months.
Okay. So before you answer Councilman Schleifer's question, before call of business today, Scott, can you please send a introduction email and include her and send it to the entire council and offer an opportunity for one-on-one meetings with each member starting sometime next week?
Yes.
Unless government relations wants to handle that, but can we just make sure that gets done today?
Got it.
Excellent, thank you. Now I'll turn it back to you for Councilman Schleifer's question.
Thank you, Councilman. To that point, we recognize that there are challenges in the permits office. As you know, we are currently in the process of replacing the permitting platform software that is also part of being built into the delay in implementation of this law, that the Acela platform will be up and running. And so that is one thing, and we continue and look forward to continuing to work with you as we address challenges with the permits office. And I know, as the councilwoman said, there is a further hearing on that next week.
And is this new software going to pick up the phones for people who work in the permit office?
So the phones rate has drastically increased. It is roughly a 95% answer rate on a daily basis, Councilman.
I would love to see that data, that it's a 95% rate, because I could tell you times when I call, I would say, I think I've maybe reached a live person maybe one time. So can you provide that data to the committee with the monthly rates of the calls being answered? And one other question on that, is the permit office working remotely, or are they working in the office?
They are in the office.
In the office, okay. So one other request that I have would be, once we meet Ms. Lewis, I would like to also request and welcome to have any of my colleagues join to do a meet and greet at the permit office with the council, so we can meet the individuals there and see who does what, so that we know. So far you got me and Councilwoman Ramos. So if we can schedule that, thank you.
I think it's a great idea. I'm not going to attend, but it's a great idea.
I'll flag it for the city administrator and they get back to you all.
Excellent. Councilman, you good? Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions for our city agencies? Seeing that there are none. So a little change of plan. We're going to go through public testimony on this. We'll wrap this up, and then we'll come back for the supplementary appropriations. We got some clarification on how to proceed there. Mr. Robert Etten. And if you come up to the microphone, I'm going to ask members of the public to limit their testimony to 2 minutes. We will have a timer up on the screen. If you can hit the bottom right button, that'll light up your ring red. Little Lego character. Yep,
Very
you're good to go, and you can move this. You want to be about 6 inches away.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Robert Enton. I'm General Counsel to the Maryland Bankers Association. I've appeared in front of the council on other occasions to address legislation that affects the banking industry. You have our written testimony, I believe, and I think the major concern that the bankers have is that nothing comes out of this bill which will have a chilling effect on mortgage lending in the city. Very often, in most cases, as far as, who has the monetary interest in the property, if I buy a house and I put 10% down or 15% down and the lender puts down 80%, 90%, it's the lender that has the, tenfold, eightfold times the financial interest. The way I read the bill, it provides for notice to the owner, but no notice whatsoever to the mortgagee, to the mortgage holder. I know that in the in-rem forfeiture bill from a few years ago, there is a process where a mortgagee can register with the city to get notices. But that's, if I'm going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of mortgages in Baltimore City, am I going to have to register for every one? We just need to make sure, we would like to see the bill amended to provide for notice to the mortgage holder, just as notice goes to the owner of the property. That's a major concern for mortgage lenders. Then there are also questions, and we're not sure, we have to be very careful that we don't do anything in this city. 80% of all mortgages get sold into the secondary market. To Fannie or Freddie or VA, and that's regulated by the Federal Housing Finance Administration. I've reached out to them to make sure that they would be comfortable buying mortgages on properties located in Baltimore City. I would really hope that we would have a chance to sit down with the Finance Department before the bill goes to the full council, and with some of our members. Our banks are very much committed to the city of Baltimore, and I don't want to just, don't want to see anything happen. We don't want to see anything happen which is going to disincentivize them from doing that. If we could sit down and work through some of these issues with the experts at our banks to make sure that what passes does provide for adequate notice. And just my closing comment is, the biggest concern that I have is what happens if a mortgage loan is in default. We have to send the notice 90 days ahead of time to the borrower, and then you have to file what's called a notice of intent to foreclose 45 days before you can file. Now, we did pass a bill in the General Assembly for an expedited foreclosure process for properties that are vacant and in trouble. Almost no jurisdictions have taken advantage of that whatsoever, none. And things chug along as they normally do. But I really do think we need to develop something in this statute. I wouldn't want to see it, somebody come back later on and say, well, sorry, we can't do that because the bill that passed in the city council doesn't provide for that. So if we could just have a little bit of time to work with the department and come up with some amendments to make sure there's due process for lenders.
So, so we are going to move the bill today. We're going to move the bill today. That said, it's important to note that there's the legislation and then there are rules and regulations that are required to be promulgated by Finance in conjunction with DHCD. And the tax does not go into effect until the 26-27 tax year, meaning that the first point in time that anyone will be required to pay this new tax, to which the applicable criteria makes them eligible for it, for lack of a better term. The earliest date would be July 1st of 2026. So we do have ample time to make sure that your association or that you represent has an opportunity to meet with the administration to share those concerns. And I think make sure those concerns are addressed in rules and regulations. And based on the kind of shaking of the heads up and down that I'm seeing from the mayor's office and finance and DHCD, I don't anticipate that being a problem. So what I would ask is after this hearing, if you could connect with Mr. Schnella from the mayor's office. He's the gentleman right here with the orange tie. And he will liaise for you with the appropriate agencies so that you all can sit down. I will say that during the drafting of the bill, and I'm remiss for not having thanked Ben Guthorn and the excellent team in the Department of Legislative Services that drafted this bill based on our intent. I know from the drafting of the bill and many conversations with finance and law and other agencies that we are able to address a lot of these things in rules and regulations. I also want to be careful from my perspective, just me speaking, not these other members as chair of this committee, of not overstepping our bounds as legislators versus the executive branch. Our role in this process is to set policy, and it is the administration's role to put the nuts and bolts together on how that policy is going to be executed. But I'm confident that Mr. Schnella is going to help you liaise with the appropriate folks so we can get you in front of these folks in a private setting with 2, 3, maybe 4 of your members, not a large community town hall, but an appropriate size meeting that can be productive and efficient to talk through these concerns.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
So I'll leave it to you, Bob, to get with Tyler after, to exchange contact info and then go from
We're
there.
happy to do that immediately. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Seeing that there are none.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Clifford Grambo. And thank you for taking your ball cap off. You would be surprised, not everyone does that.
I'm sorry I didn't dress nicer. I went to jury duty. I was very overdressed, so I was like, all right. Now I'm looking around. I'm like, did it again. Okay. My name's Clifford Grambo. I'm a Maryland native. I joined the Navy after 9/11, retired about 2 years ago, and retired to Baltimore. I want to address what happens with vacant properties when a law like this isn't passed. Councilwoman Ramos was nice enough to help me. Recently, the property next to me was leaking into my house. It's a long story. Guy up and vanished. Now, I'm retired. I understand I have the benefits of being a well-to-do white man in a good part of Baltimore, and it's still taken me over a year of nothing but bothering the city offices, bothering the mayor's office, et cetera. I've spent over $8,000 on a lawyer, private investigators, because of vacant property. A guy just up and disappeared in the middle of the night, and there's not really a remedy to address that. This bill I support because it will hopefully address this. I wish it was a lot faster. I wish there was a lot quicker means to address this. What has happened, over a quarter of my house is unusable right now due to the mold and some of my disabilities. I have trouble breathing in my own home, and this is supposed to be the time where I'm supposed to be getting my head right. Again, Ash in Councilman Zeke's office has been an amazing help. Councilwoman Ramos, I don't know if you remember, we even Zoomed, and she was able to give me a little bit of a direction. But still, the fact that it's taken this long in my mind is just, I don't even know what to call it. Oh, they didn't start the timer. So I guess trying to keep this close, I practiced it. In short, worry about the neighbor, not the mortgage interest or the mortgage lobbyist or the out-of-town landlord's interest. If they want to receive the benefits of being in our community, then they need to be more involved in our community. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grambo. Mike Pasco? Bottom right button. You got the red ring, you're good to speak.
All right, sorry about that. Dear Chairman and members of the committee, good morning. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. I'm Mike Pasco, CEO for Habitat for Humanity of Chesapeake. For years, our organization, as you know, have been building homes in this region, and recently we celebrated our 800th home in Curtis Bay just this past summer. Right now, we have over 30 homes in production, pre-development, and active construction. This includes both rehab and new construction. Over the years, we've rehabbed over 500 homes in Baltimore City alone. I'm here to state our support for the vacancy tax because I know that it could mean for Baltimore, it could help accelerate our ability to get abandoned houses into useful production. And in Habitat's case, it's for affordable home ownership. However, as you've already stated, for nonprofit developers, the carrying costs for rehabs and inventory can be quite high. For us alone, it's cost us about $70,000 a year. However, in this pre-development construction phase, as you know, it takes quite a while to get your permits and get things through planning and zoning, so that carrying cost just escalates. This bill will escalate those costs, posing additional challenges, so we would ask, as you've already said, that you not penalize developers like us and find a way to reduce those carrying costs so that the savings could be better invested in more homes. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Claudia Wilson Randall.
Good morning, and thank you all for your work on this important issue. My name is Claudia Wilson Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network. You have my written testimony for the record. I just want to urge your support for Bill 240001. I think the special rate for vacant and abandoned property is critical. It's a critical tool that the city needs to hold private owners accountable for their vacant property. There's been a lot of discussion over the last 6 to 8 months about the city's city-owned property. But city-owned property is just really the tip of the iceberg. We know there's a lot more privately owned property in the city of Baltimore, vacant property in the city of Baltimore. And while I do not believe that these property owners will pay this tax in any great number, it gives the city a chance to get more properties into the in-rem system and foreclose on the properties for redevelopment. Recently, Mayor Scott, GBC, and BUILD came together to announce a historic commitment to raising funds needed to rehabilitate vacant properties. Governor Morris signed an executive order recommitting $50 million per year and creating Reinvest Baltimore Council. These are great steps in the right direction, but they're not the only steps we need. This tax, in my belief, begins to also address the epidemic of vacancy in areas of the city where there is not a market. I think 2 years ago, the Johns Hopkins University 21st Initiative identified $100 million and directly identify operating and capital expenses for vacant properties in the 2022 city budget, with more expenses embedded and broad agency budgets that can't be separated out. That's a lot of money going to take care of vacancy in the city of Baltimore. And we can't forget the fire in 2022 that killed 3 firefighters in West Baltimore and cast an urgent attention on the challenges posed by neglected private property. We also had a citizens killed when vacant property crumbled on their car. But every day, we have children walking through neighborhoods with wide-scale vacancy. I don't know that this is a scientific fact, but one of our researchers, when we were doing the discussions with communities about the impact of vacancy, one of them said, a kindergartner walks by 29 vacant properties on the way to kindergarten and has failed first grade. And it just stayed with me. I can't shake that. So I am very much in favor of this special rate tax and hope that you will keep your eye on neighborhoods without a market to address vacancy. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Evan Richards? Is that correct? I'm only good with my own handwriting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Evan Richards. I'm the head of government community affairs for the Maryland Bankers Association. I'll be brief, as we just appreciate the willingness to hear our concerns. Banks look forward to being a partner as the city tackles this vacant housing crisis. You had a bank who just recently made a several $1 million investment in Baltimore to help tackle this crisis. And we look forward to working with interested parties as we address these concerns.
Excellent. And Evan, if you would join Bob after with Tyler, make sure he has your contact information so you're included in that meeting. I'm pleased to report, I just got an email from the Deputy Director in Finance, Mositas, that mortgage company would get notice once the bill is issued, but no prior notice unless a separate communication were planned. However, our wonderful finance folks have gotten Ms. Neely looped in. So everyone is talking and already starting to think about that conversation, which is going to be productive. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Do we have any other members of the public who wish to testify on this matter? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay. Colleagues, any other questions for our city agencies? Okay. The chair is going to entertain a motion to move this bill favorably, and then the chair is going to make a motion to move the bill favorably. Is there a second? Second by Vice President Middleton. Costello is a yes. Burnett is absent. Dorsey is absent. McCray is absent. Middleton? Yes. Schleifer? Yes. Stokes? Yes. This bill passes 4-0 with 3 absences. It moves to second reader at the next full meeting of the City Council. We will now get back to supplementary appropriations. Council Bill 24-0602, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Transportation in the amount of $25,000. Ms. Ruley, just confirming this was not one of the subject bills that had concerns.
I wasn't here for that part of the hearing, but that's my understanding. There were only 2 that had a concern, and I'm trying to, we're still trying to make sure we got that correctly.
03 and 04. Okay, so we'll do the first 4, or we'll do the 4 that do not have issues first. So, colleagues, is there a motion to move this bill favorably? Motion by Stokes, second by Middleton. Costello is a yes. Stokes? Yes. Middleton? Yes. Schleifer? Yes. Burnett, McCray, and Dorsey absent. This bill passes 4-0 and moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. Next up, 24-0605. Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Housing and Community Development in the amount of $315,000. Is there a motion to move the bill? Motion by Stokes, second by Schleifer. Costello is a yes. Stokes? Yes. Schleifer? Yes. Middleton? Yes. McCray, Burnett, and Dorsey are absent. This bill passes 4-0 with 3 absences and moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. Next up, Council Bill 24-0, we're now in recess on that. Next up, Council Bill 24-0606, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Public Works in the amount of $6 million. Is there a motion to move this bill favorably? Motion by Stokes, second by Middleton. Costello is a yes. Middleton? Stokes? Schleifer? Dorsey, Burnett, and McCray are absent. This bill passes 4-0 with 3 absences, moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. Next up, Council Bill 24-0607, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation to the City Council in the amount of $5,250,000. Is there a motion to move this? Motion by Stokes, second by Schleifer. Costello is a yes. Stokes? Middleton? Schleifer? McCray, Dorsey, and Burnett are absent. This bill passes 4-0 and moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. Okay, for the remaining 2 bills.
Councilman,
Yes,
my
ma'am.
understanding is that someone from Legislative Reference and Law are coming with the correct amendments for those.
They'll be ready for now.
I have no idea, but that's the hope.
That is outstanding. If you could get me an ETA, and if they're going to be here in the next 5 to 10 minutes, we will wait. If not, we will move the bills and we will be prepared to amend on second reader with the commitment that we will not move the bills on second reader until they are fully amended per law's guidance.
Yeah, you might, I will double check right now, but you might be best to do the second reader amendment, just to be sure. But
That'd be the
hopefully we're doing
way
it
the
now.
administration wants to
That's
go.
what mayor's, okay, that's what we're gonna do. So, colleagues, we're gonna entertain motions for these 2 bills. Very briefly, I'm going to summarize what the issue is and then ask Ms. Ruley from the Law Department to confirm that I articulated it correctly. In short, these 2 supplementary appropriation bills move money to multiple services within the budget. As such, the purpose statement or purpose clause at the beginning of the bill needs to be updated to properly reflect where the money is moving to. Ms. Ruley, did I capture that correctly?
Yes.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chair.
And just to confirm, the amounts of money that are being appropriated, as well as the service areas to which they are being appropriated, as well as the source of the funds, are not subject to change as a result of the amendments. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, Mr. Chair.
Finance, can you please confirm that's correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Outstanding. So, Council Bill 24-0603, General Fund Operating Appropriation, Department of Recreation and Parks, in the amount of $905,000. Is there a motion to move this bill favorably? Motion by Stokes, second by Middleton. Costello is a yes. Middleton? Schleifer? Stokes? Dorsey, McCray, and Burnett are absent. This bill passes 4-0 with 3 absences and moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. This bill will not move on second reader until amendments are presented from the administration, which the committee will view as, and the full council will view as friendly amendments. Next up, Council Bill 24-0604, Supplementary General Fund Operating Appropriation, Mayoralty in the amount of $41,355,000. Is there a motion to move this bill favorably? Motion by Stokes, second by Middleton. Costello is a yes. Schleifer? Stokes? Middleton? Dorsey, Burnett, and McCray are absent. This bill moves to the next full meeting of the City Council. This bill will stay on second reader until it is amended with amendments provided by the administration, which will be viewed by the council as friendly amendments. Seeing that there is no other business before the committee today, we are now in recess. Thank you all.